The first thing that probably comes to your head when you think of animals is your pet dog or cat. And if you don't have a pet, you might think of zoo animals like the one in the pictures. This is really a rather small range of animals. Animals range in size from barely visible flatworms you find in the bottom of lakes to mosquitoes, spiders, lizards, lobsters, snails, birds, and fish, as well as familiar mammals. Despite how diverse they are, animals share four things in common. Using the chart on the side, you can see that all living things are put into two groups, prokaryotes and eukaryotes. The first thing that all animals have in common is that their cells are eukaryotic. This means that they contain a nucleus at some point during their lives. Most of the time, they also contain cell organelles like the ones you just studied. One notable exception is the mature red blood cell. Blood cells are made in the bone marrow. Once they've completed the maturation process, they travel out to the blood to do their job. During maturation, red blood cells lose their organelles, including their nucleus. Eukaryotes can be broken down into two groups as well. Organisms with a single cell, or many simple cells, and organisms with many complex cells that have different structures and functions. Animals, like humans, have different types of cells that each has a special function in helping the whole organism to function. Multicellular organisms are broken down into heterotrophic and autotrophic. Heterotrophs obtain nutrients from outside sources, in other words, by eating. Finally, animal cells do not have a cell wall. Although many different cells in your body have specific jobs, they all work together to keep you alive. Cells with specific functions are called specialized cells. It is an advantage to have specialized cells so that each can do its job more efficiently. Groups of cells with the same function are called tissues. The job of nerve tissue is to send messages, so nerve tissue is made up of many nerve cells that are all near each other. Groups of tissues are called organs and work together to perform a more generalized function than one single type of tissue. For example, the job of the stomach is to physically and chemically break down food. The stomach is made up of several different types of tissue in order to help it carry out this task. It contains nerve tissue, which sends and receives messages between the stomach and the brain, which tells it if there's food present to break down. It contains blood cells to bring nutrients to the stomach, as well as muscle cells that help our stomach contract to physically break down that food. Because our tissues and organs are able to serve so many functions, animals are a diverse group, and animals live in all kinds of different climates. Animals are also heterotrophic, and just to review, it means that they get their food by eating it. In many animals, organ systems, which include more than just a single organ, and control even broader, more basic functions. While the stomach breaks down food physically and mechanically, the job of the digestive system is to take nutrients in from the food. One of the first steps in doing this is to break down food into small pieces by physically chomping or grinding it, and chemically by exposing them to different enzymes. Enzymes break down food. You might not believe this, but over 95% of all animals can be categorized as invertebrates. Invertebrates don't have a backbone for support. They use some other interesting ways to keep their shape and help move around. They might use water to help support them, or an exoskeleton found on the outside of their body. I bet these were not the first things you thought of at the beginning of the lecture when I asked you to picture an animal. Many invertebrates like shellfish, colorful feathery worms, and octopus live deep in the ocean where we don't encounter them very often. Animals with backbones are called vertebrates. This means they have a backbone which provides them support in their bodies. All vertebrates belong to a slightly larger group of animals called chordates. The only type of animal that are not part of the group of vertebrates, but are chordates, are two tiny organisms you may have never heard of before. Lancets are small worm-like creatures that live half buried in the sand of freshwater lakes. The other group Tunicates are small, soft-bodied creatures that live on the ocean floor. All chordates have 4 characteristics that can be seen at some point during their life. So right now in your notes, I'd like you to make a chart with 3 columns. One for the characteristic, one for the description of that characteristic, and the third one for what that particular characteristic could eventually become in the organism. So some of these characteristics can be seen throughout the life of an animal, and others are only present during development. In fact, if you look at a picture of yourself from before you were born, like on an ultrasound, and a picture of a fish, and a picture of a fish before it's born, they actually don't look all that different. First of all chordates have pharyngeal pouches. These are pockets near the throat. In fish, they develop and become gills, and in humans, they become our tonsils and inner ear. The second characteristic of chordates is a notochord. This is a stiff, rod-like structure in the back. Humans have a notochord that's present before birth, but eventually the spinal column takes over this function once humans are born. So a notochord becomes the backbone in vertebrates. And the main function of the notochord is support. A dorsal hollow nerve cord is related to the notochord. This is a hollow structure along the back that is full of nerves. So in humans, this becomes our spinal cord. Finally, all chordates have a tail at some point during development. Believe it or not, before you were born, you had a tail, and you probably still notice that if you fall on your butt really hard, that you fall on your tailbone. All of these characteristics could change during the course of an animal's life. For example, pharyngeal pouches becoming gills. But all 4 of these characteristics are present at some point during the life of a chordate.